3 drummers, a female choir, Shay Amy Dorvell, Annika von Giersbergen, Steve Vai, Nickelback's Chad Kroger. Let me guess, now you're going to do that classic hipster bullshit of dissing Chad and Nickelback. I was just stating a fact that he appears on the album. So you weren't going to make some dismissive remark about him then? No. Just would have expected it from you, that's all. I actually think he's a talented songwriter who gets way too much shit than he deserves. Oh right, I just assumed. You're actually the ignorant one for assuming things about me. Well, I didn't mean any offence. Well, you have caused offence and slowed down the intro. I apologise. As well you should, and I suggest that you take a long hard look at yourself while you're there and adjust your attitude accordingly. Okay. Right. Empath from Devin Townsend. Message the other day, yeah, it'll be here sometime next week. Fucking awesome. Okay, so before I get started, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, make sure you like. A lot of people forget to do that at the end, so if you're a regular viewer, press the like button now, and also leave a comment on what you think of the album. And if any of you are interested in this sort of thing, I'm going to put the written version of this review on my website, freetobewhoib.com. This is the 18th, maybe even 19th, I don't know, studio album from the Canadian genius himself, Mr. Devin Townsend, and that doesn't include his discography with Strapping Young Lad. That's a whole other thing. Now, I've been a huge fan of Mr. Townsend ever since I first heard the incredible City album way back in 1997. And I've pretty much checked out everything he's done along the way. Well, check you out. I'm just saying that I'm aware of all the different styles that he's gone through over the years, and I think that that gives me some validity in my review. Still just in the field though, ain't ya? That being said, I haven't truly loved one of his albums since 2014's Casualties Are Cool. I thought the first 4 albums he did as part of the Devin Townsend project, Key, Addicted, Deconstruction and Ghost, were absolutely incredible. And Epic Cloud was an amazing album. I loved it from start to finish on the first listen, and I still do to this day. Casualties Are Cool, of course, he did with Shay Amy Dorvell, who also appears on this album. Stunning piece of work, much underrated, or maybe not underrated, but certainly not enough people know about it. God, that went on. But I do feel the last couple of albums that he did with the DTP were not some of his best. In your opinion? Yes, in my opinion. Calm down. I just think that often his best work is when he's left truly to his own devices. Fair enough. And now, without further fudge, the review. First up, we have Castaway. Starts out with a lapping of waves and starts out with some ambient tone guitar with more than a Hawaiian tinge. This gives a real feeling of being cast away. It's worth pointing out at this point as well that there's actually a 7-part documentary available on YouTube, and in that documentary Devin briefly states how he sees the main character, which I guess is himself, being on this isolated island he's been cast away to. And the island is full of some of the most horrifying monsters and most beautiful creatures ever. But our protagonist can walk freely amongst them without being harmed. I'm not really sure what this means, but it's probably a metaphor for being middle-aged and sort of dealing with that sort of shizzy fudge. The Electro Women's Choir joins in. Tonight, when the soul keeps silent, say a prayer for the beloved end. Is only heaven a game in vain? We pray for it all. Before going into the first track proper, Genesis. Now, I've already actually done a review of this track, and you can find the link in the description for that, but I will say now that as much as I loved the song when I first heard it, it's gotten better and better with every listen. Good work, Dev! I think it's only right as well that I point out just how many other musicians there are on this album. We have 3 drummers, as I mentioned earlier. We have Morgan Agron, who he did work with on Casualties of Cool. We have Anoop Zastri and Seamus Porcerelli, each one lending their own unique and specific talents to the album, and they do a wonderful job, it has to be said. We have Nathan Navarro on bass duties. We have the aforementioned Annika von Giersbergen, Shay Amy Dorvell, we have Steve Vai, Chad Kroger, which has been a bit of a controversial one for some. Elliot Desangne provides some additional vocals here and there. We have the Electra Women's Choir. We get some additional guitar from Ryan Dahl. The incredible Mike Keneally adds musical direction to the album. And the epic orchestral arrangements are performed competently by the Lords of the Sound Orchestra. Production duties on the album were actually handled by Devin himself, with help from Adam Nolly Getgood. Nolly being his nickname, I guess. Not his given birth name. Moving on! Third song, Spirits Will Collide, which has just been released as a single. Quite an impressive video that goes along with it. And this is a huge anthemic song, and probably the only really truly traditionally structured song on the album. Big 80s influence on this, as there often is with Townsend's music. Huge fat sounding drums. The guitars are also huge, and the vocals are huge. This is a glorious song that really kind of has a lot in common with the stuff that he did on Epicloud, and it has a very similar kind of optimism reflected in the lyrics. So we rise, receive the pain, but this isn't where it ends. Don't you forget that you are perfect. Don't you forget just who we are. We're strong enough. Love this song. Next up we have Evermore, and once again this is a song that I've already done a review for, so make sure you go and check that one out. Link in description. Next up we have Sprite, and this one starts out with a narrated piece. I'm not sure who actually does that, to be honest with you. Very good of me. The narrative talks of a bird who's sad because it didn't have a mum or a dad, and he'd forgotten how to fly, as well as the will to try. This is supposed to be an enjoyable experience. This one has a Eastern tinge to some of the instrumentation, and there's a bit more electronica added to this song. Kind of reminds me of some of the work he did with Sky Blue, or was it Blue Skies? Might be Blue Skies. We also get some arpeggios thrown in there. Gotta have some arpeggios for it to be a Devin album. There are also elements on this song that reminds me of his work on Key. Later we get stuff from Deconstruction, as well as some of the ambient noise stuff that he did with The Hummer and DevLab. It has to be said that this album really does feel like a culmination of everything he's done in the past. Not a bad song, but nothing that blew me away either. Next up we have Hear Me. Very reminiscent of his work on Deconstruction, with some very complex and heavy riffing, and Annika von Giersbergen joins in on this one. As well as the Deconstruction comparisons, this was probably the song on the album that I think directly was inspired by his time with Strapping Young Lad. The main verse riff was very reminiscent of Critic from his Heavy Is a Really Heavy Thing album, and there's a vocal passage in it that is very similar to some of the stuff that he did on bonus tracks Japan and Centipede. Look at you with the knowledge. There's also a furious double bass tremolo picked section that's very reminiscent of what he did with Physicist, or Fizzed. There's SYL style gang vocals very similar to that on The New Black, and full on Deconstruction era arpeggiated bliss. I think you're just showing off a bit now. There's a huge amount to love about this song, and I think Chad Kroger is in this one somewhere. Next up we have Why. I'm guessing that anyone who is more accustomed to Devin's heavier material will probably be a bit put off by this one. This is pretty much bordering on Disney territory. Devin has tried this sort of thing on other albums, but never to this extent, never really gone this deep. He's often expressed his love for film composers such as John Williams, etc, etc. Didn't research any others then. And there is a definite nod to that filmic orchestral score that will no doubt come into play on his upcoming project, The Moth. Some may find this one very cheesy, but I for one actually pretty much enjoyed this one. Next track is Borderlands, and the instrumentation at the beginning of this one is very ska based, and actually very reminiscent of UB40's Kingston Town. And Devin is quick to inform us, I desire a good life. Gotta have a good life. Gotta have a good life. ×2. There are more progressive elements thrown in, and there's a great hooky riff that's peppered throughout the song. Down, digga digga dunk dunk, digga down, digga digga dunk dunk. As well as a return to the tranquil sound of Townsend. There's an album title, A la Key, Ghost, or Casualties of Cool. And then the next track is Requiem, a beautiful respite courtesy of the incredibly talented Electra Women's Choir, along with more symphonic instrumentation. And we even get a nod back to the Transcendence album, or more specifically Stormbending. All we're offering is a chance to be loved. Before going into the 6-part, 24-minute song, Singularity. And before I get stuck into that, I'm just going to take a brief break and reminisce on my failures in life. Now that I've successfully compartmentalised all of that into the back of my brain, let's get on with it. Singularity Part 1, Adrift. Ambient lead guitar that reminds me of some of the incredible work he did on Terrier, that then morphs into his Ghost era. I don't know where to go and I don't know what to do, but I know that I want to be there with my arms around you. I'm alone. I would guess that's probably the meaning behind the title, Adrift. Stunning analysis. The song builds and truly displays the impressive vocal talents of Mr. Townsend. Beautiful song. Part 2, I Am I. Starts out with some of the more John Williams-esque cinematic score before amping up into something that's kind of reminiscent of Deconstruction's Stand. It has to be said that a lot of the heavier stuff on the album does have that bearing to the criminally underrated Deconstruction album. I guess that's due to its more symphonic elements. There's a bloody helicopter making a lot of noise. We also get some of the more ambient noise, which is not being represented here. Yeah, some of the elements he did with Devlav and the Hummer. And the bridge section on this song reminds me of something that could have come from the Infinity album. I had to alter my path there somewhat as there was somebody walking towards me. I must look strange to people. Next up we have Part 3, of course, Let There Be Monsters. Things take a more sinister tone on this song, which builds up into tremolo picking and full-on blast beats, which is quite reminiscent of some of the stuff that he did on the self-titled and criminally underrated Strapping Young Lad album. As the song title suggests, this one's pretty much unrelenting and a joy to listen to. Gotta find a way out of this war. Psychologic war. Psychotropic war. Psychosexual war. Sounds like you want to get out of that, mate. Things continue with Part 4, Curious Gods. A return to the ambient and tranquil with a hint of jazz thrown in. And prog, of course. With a good amount of Devlav the Hummer era thrown in as well. Things continue with Part 5, Silicon Scientists. A lot more electronica appears in this one with some of Devin Townsend's impressive lead guitar playing as well as some heavy power chord stabs and some orchestration. And then we get Part 6 of Singularity, being the final song on the album, Here Comes the Sun. I believe that it's Steve Vai who appears on this one, lending his incredible guitar talents, and this one brings to mind some of the work that he did on Syncastra mixed with Epicloud. There's a great use of heavy guitar in it, some full-on arpeggio sections, oh dear, and the wonderful Anneke von Giersbergen makes a final appearance, and a lovely one at that. Through the meadow, through the field, shine forever, shine on me, for the future is ours to see. I'll shine for you if you shine for me. Now, it's also worth pointing out that I've got the edition, or I will do when Amazon finally fucking deliver it. I've got the 2-disc edition, which comes with another 10 bonus songs. And for those of you who are interested, I'm going to do a separate review of that next week. So I'll do Disc 2 next week, which is just a repeat of what I just said. So that was Empath, one of my most highly anticipated albums of the year. Was it worth the wait? Hell yes, I'd give this a 9 out of 10. Now, I'm going to be slightly biased on this because I'm a huge Devin Townsend fan, but it's worth pointing out that on first listen I wasn't particularly taken with the album. There were moments, of course, which went straight into my brainy brain, but having listened to it probably a good 7 times now, it's gotten better and better with every single listen. I mean, that's kind of the point of this album. It's not meant to be digested in one go and like immediately get it. There's so much going on in this, but again, the more I listened to it, the more I just got completely enveloped in it. And it has to be listened to as an album. For the uninitiated, I can totally see why people would not be taken with this album. And for those who purely enjoy Devin's heavier moments, they're probably not going to enjoy this either. But anyone who's stayed the course with the great man, such as myself, I think you're going to find a lot to enjoy here. Now, is this his masterpiece? I don't believe so, because I firmly believe that that is still to come, but it's pretty damn close. And there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that this is the best work he's done since Casualties of Cool. I think there's just something very special when Devin is just completely untethered and on his own and just doing and just following his vision. Maybe things were watered down a little bit with the last couple of DTP albums. I don't know, but this is certainly the most enjoyable album I've heard of his since Casualties of Cool. I've already said that. A truly stunning effort from one of our true geniuses, and that is a word that shouldn't be used too often, but it does apply for Mr. Townsend. All hail Devin Townsend. Or, you know, just listen to it. You'll probably appreciate that just as much. 9 out of 10. Going to be very difficult to beat this album, I think. Definitely strong contender for album of the year for me. So, what have we next? Well, if I haven't put it out already, I'm going to do a track review of the latest Rammstein single. Of course, they've just released Deutschland from their upcoming album, and yes, I've heard it and I've written a review, and I'm going to go and film that in a moment. It might have been all out already, I'm not sure, but if it is, go and check out that. And I'm also just going to go and do a review of Whitechapel's The Valley. Next week we've got Periphery, of course. I'm going to do the second disc from the Empath album. I'll do a review of that. And I'm also strongly considering doing a classic album review of Crack the Sky, because that's just turned 10 years old. So next week I'm more than likely going to do a review for that as well. So plenty to come, and see you there.